1980. Conor Hayes, the man to my left. In 87 and 88 were the captains. But David Burke is running captain Galway to the 5th All-Ireland crown. 29 years of agony.
And this is for everyone from Galway. This is for clubs. This is for family. This is for people of Galway. Welcome back to the Westmeath County. We miss you, lads.
The Hurling Show from Off the Ball.
Hello and welcome to the Hurling Show here on Off the Ball. It's myself, Shane Stapleton. In studio with me is Michael Verney of the Irish Independent and William O'Callaghan.
William. I'd like you to mess that up ever so slightly. Good afternoon, Jen.
I stole Verney's line on this. So get your comments in at hashtag The Hurling Show, Facebook, Twitter, Periscope, online, whatever way you're watching us. YouTube as well.
Hold on a second now, it's all grand introducing us. Every week it's like these two biffos, the boys are on the floor. The boys are absolutely cock-a-hoop today after the under-20s winning last night.
We get to your under-20s in a minute, but I think we need to give a couple of teams their moment in the sun as well. The Christy Ring final at the weekend, Meath 4-19, down 2-15. So that's Meath replacing your boys Offaly. Before we get on to the positives, that's Meath replacing your boys Offaly in the Joe McDonagh next year. We're going to have to start with the goal of the week, and that has to be one man and one man only. He got a couple of goals at Croke Park for Meath. It's Adam Gannon, so that should be coming up on the screen there now. And if it's not, I'll kill the producer. Looks like I'm going to be killing the producer, lads.
Yeah, it was brilliant. A couple of crucial goals.
Yeah,
there we go.
Just a small little goat, a little nippy corner forward goat. In fairness, a kid one might say.
Well, like they actually could have gone to town in the early parts of the game.
Yeah, no, they were fairly dominant without impressing either. They probably wouldn't be overly happy with the result. And as I just said last week as well, Sean Geraghty, who should have had his spleen removed in January but is now a test case for all doctors around the world, was captain Meath the other day and played every minute I think of the Christy Ring despite the injury, which is fair all gone. Yeah,
and if we look at the Nicky Rackard final, Sligo 2-14, Armagh 2-13. 19-year-old captain James Weir leading Sligo to glory there. That's impressive stuff.
It's impressive because they were behind nearly the whole way. It was basically 2 goals in injury time from the man we mentioned last week, Gerard O'Kelly Lynch, who played football the day after. 2 crucial goals, and I believe I didn't get to see enough of the game, but I saw enough to realise he was very influential. Keith Raymond again, who's been playing with Sligo I think since he's 15, was outstanding again. Like
Tipperary blood in him.
Yeah, and just an interesting one actually. So Sligo will play Christy Ring next year and will play against Offaly. Sligo are still in the bottom tier of the league, Division 3B.
Yeah.
So they're still theoretically in the 4 worst hurling teams in the country, and they're playing in the 3rd tier of the championship, which is phenomenal.
And let's move on then to the Lory Meagher Cup final. Leitrim 2-23, Lancashire 2-22 after extra time. I watched 2 of the matches, and that was one that I watched, and it seemed in the first half as if Leitrim were going to walk away with it. Then the second half, Ronan Crowley was on fire for Lancashire. They looked like they had it all won. And then Zach Morady sets up a goal to equalise at the last puck of the game, and then Leitrim go on and win in extra time as well.
Some drama, wasn't it?
It was actually. Drama. And the speech, we're going to have the speech coming up now from
You're going to have all of it, because I think it went on for a long time.
They were trying to boot him off the stage. He was like, no, this is our moment.
I don't know if you saw him actually. There was a picture, the snappers are taking a picture just before the presentation, and he was lying down the front. He's actually from Lura, he went to school in Burr, and the Croke Park lad came over and was like, you know what, lad that always pulls him away for the speech. And he was just like, get away from me, I'm sucking up all of this.
Well, here comes a bit of the speech from Declan Malloy as well. This was great stuff.
Who? Am I dreaming or am I awake? Finally, we've got up the steps to Hogan. It's absolutely unbelievable for Leitrim hurling. A cordial, agus a cordial air, the Ahas and Down Arm, a curtain shot, Ursa Fern, Leitrim! We're going to take our time. It's taken us a long time to get here, so we'll relax for a second now. Deegan.
One of the things that I love that he went on to say is, for the first time in Leitrim hurling this year, we heard the words cutting a panel, we said with respect that we were cutting no panel.
I thought he was going to do a rock there for a minute. It was like, finally. No, it was brilliant, yeah. And even he was still panting up there. Like.
He was, yeah. And then did you see him then for the pictures diving across for the team
stuff,
photos?
Yeah. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. And so the 3 fixtures coming up this weekend, we'll just run through them and then we'll get on to your Offaly buzz, because I know you've been waiting for a long
buzz actually, not just Offaly, baby.
So the Leinster final this weekend, Kilkenny Wexford, looking forward to that. We'll look at that first. Then Limerick Tipperary in the Munster final, and the Joe McDonagh final as well, with a place in the Leinster Championship next year up for grabs as well. That's on Sunday at 1:45. Huge win for Offaly lads last night. Offaly beat Dublin in the under-20s at Parnell Park after extra time. Cathal Kiley scoring 20 points and John Murphy with the winning free with more or less the last puck of the ball.
Yeah, and like if you consider Offaly at under 20 level haven't exactly done brilliantly in recent years, definitely the last 12 or 13 years, since getting to a final against Kilkenny where they were pretty easily taken out. Like, this is a huge result, and I think it's probably been made even more huge, Shane, because of the year that's just gone by, because obviously all the doom and gloom, you know, really only competitive in a couple of games this year, only won one match at senior level, and then for the under-20s to give that lift. And particularly, I think, as well, this is an under-20 team who play a bit differently to the senior team as well. There's big physical lads on there. One of the key points of last night is that they were able to out-battle Dublin, particularly in the air, and they were able for the physicality, even when it came to Dublin's running game at different stages. Offaly went ahead for the first time, I think 1 minute into injury time at the end of the 60 minutes, and then the game goes to extra time. Offaly went 7 points up in extra time, and then just to give everybody a scare in the faithful county, Dublin managed to get it back to a level game. Looked like they were going to finish level at the end of extra time as well, and then a mammoth free against the wind gets sent over in the very last moment. So fairy tale
they're ballsy
really.
As well, because Cathal Kiley was after hitting, I think,
20 scores.
Yeah, 17 placed balls, and then he's gone off, and I'm sure everyone's thinking, oh Jesus, you know, the man who's put them all over has gone off the field, but John Murphy stood up as well. And just on it as well, it's like this is a good Dublin team, beaten in the under-17 All-Ireland 2 years ago. I know that they're probably missing a few.
I'll give you the dose of reality.
Yeah.
They were down 4 starters that I kind of figure in there. Luke Walsh, Enda O'Donnell, Michael Murphy and Ben McHugh. So not to rain on your parade too much, but definitely wasn't Dublin full strength.
The optimism wouldn't have been unbelievably high in Offaly, because there's a good few lads not on that Offaly panel that would have, you'd imagine, been on it, whether some of them didn't go in, other lads just weren't available and different things. So just on it as well, the under-20 championship this year is a little different. So because Ulster is playing in Leinster, the beaten provincial finalists are straight into an All-Ireland semi-final. So if Offaly were to win the next day against Wexford, which you'd imagine would have been the weaker of Wexford, Kilkenny and Galway, so it's Kilkenny and Galway in the other semi-final. It's a massive incentive for the winner there. You're in an All-Ireland semi-final straight away, and yeah, it could be maybe with a bit of luck we'd have a longer summer than we've had in a long time with any of our teams.
Yeah, especially after losing in the minors to Kildare as well, which would have been a fair jolt to the system. There was a tweet.
Different type of side as well, Shane. They were just saying to Michael Offair before we came on, like, dominated really by players from Ballinamere Durrow and from Kilcormac Laois, who have been the strongest underage teams in hurling at minor level for the last few years. You know, very little representation from, I think, was there anyone from Coolderry involved?
I don't think there's anyone
nobody
from
St. Rynas, nobody from Burr. So kind of the traditional clubs weren't that well represented.
A couple of the recent county champions there.
Yeah, and you're looking at obviously the next wave of players coming through, and particularly with Ballinamere Durrow, they've kind of been a fairly shining example in an area that would have been seen as football for a long time, but they've been coming on greatly. Both Michael Duignan and Daithí Regan doing some good work there. It's showing fruit with that under-20 team as well.
These are men, isn't that the way you talk in Offaly when you finally beat Dublin in some stage or other? You did it last year after you beat them in the league a week in Dublin team. You're at it again. Nisha Waldron tweeted, just out of curiosity, and this is directly at the two of you, just out of curiosity, with all the doom and gloom around Offaly hurling, we often hear how the struggle with a small hurling area and only 8 senior clubs. How many senior clubs are in Westmeath, Antrim, Kerry, Carlow and Laois? They seem to be doing okay. Offaly will now be competing with Derry, who would have a similar size of a hurling landscape, while Wicklow and Down would have much, much smaller than Offaly. So what happened, and not to mention Kildare as well, would be in that list.
Do we want to get into everything?
Yeah, well, no, but just very quickly, like, why would you single out we only have 8 clubs?
I've never brought that up, to be honest with you. I don't agree with that pick. Carlow only have 4 senior clubs. Like,
to be honest, Shane, I think Jack and Kelly made a mistake bringing it up after the game in Kerry as well.
Yeah.
I think it was a foolish thing to say, because there are people in North Offaly, which will be kind of traditionally football, who are making big pushes for hurling at the moment. I think it probably offended a lot of people. I don't think that's the way Joachim actually meant it. I think the point he was trying to make was Offaly don't have the biggest pick population wise, and there are areas in the county which are heavily populated that maybe wouldn't be hurling strong strongholds, but I think it got a lot of people's backs up. And at the same time, you just talk about Ballinamirror, look at what they're contributing to that under-20 team. So Offaly need everyone. Tullamore School's been going well the last few years as well. The idea should be to try and encourage more people to play rather than to try and maybe build some mindset that there's just some small area keeping hurling going.
And isn't it the case that you could have a small parish of 1,000 people that just generation after generation after generation just produces excellent hurlers?
No, that's the way.
So why couldn't the county do it if a small area can? And that's not to sort of suggest that the likes of a heavily populated area doesn't have an advantage, or a heavily populated county. It doesn't, but it just
pick up the Westmeath and Laois point, obviously Nicky was making there as well. Like in Westmeath, you're really looking at a small cluster of clubs around Mullingar who contribute primarily to the hurling as well. Like Southern Gales are keeping a bit of hurling going in the south around the Athlone area, but really everything is up kind of north of Mullingar, and it's clubs in that area, particularly Harney and Clonkill, who contribute a tremendous amount to the county teams. And at Laois, similarly, you look at Camross, which is a very small rural area, have dominated Laois club hurling over the years, and realistically they're just squeezing every bit that they can out of every young player that comes through in the club. So it can be done. It doesn't have to be a case of big populations.
Let's move on to the Leinster final this weekend. Kilkenny against Wexford. Just there's something I wanted to look at. It's an image of the Tipp or the Kilkenny team sheet from the last day, and I just happened to come across it again last night. Now Joey Holden came in cornerback for Tommy Walsh. This is the late changes. Enda Morrissey is named ostensibly at midfield for Alan Murphy, and then Killian Buckley replaces Bill Sheehan in the lineup as well. And the more I thought about it, that's Brian Cody evolving, I suppose, or reacting to the fact that Wexford aren't going to set up differently. They flood the middle. And as a Kilkenny man, our manager, I'm only going to start 5 forwards now and flood the middle myself. So the 5 forwards he has on the field are Billy Ryan, TJ Reid, Colin Fennelly, Wally Walsh and Adrian Mullen. So that says to me that he's looking to evolve or certainly adapt to how Wexford set up, which is quite an important point.
Yeah, he definitely has adapted. He would have been unbelievably frustrated after the 2017 game, and for a good while it was kind of, you could see it in games. They didn't really know how to work around the sweeper, weren't really sure what way to go about it.
Well, they'd lost that league quarter-final, I think, to Wexford in Nolan Park as well.
That's right, yeah. And Brian Cody's no fool. Like, he would always pick up lessons from defeats and things like that. And we always say, he nearly always wins replays as well. There's a reason why he has such a good record. He learns from his mistakes.
Isn't this the first time though that, normally in the past when he's learned from replays, 2012 for example against Galway, 2014 against Tipperary, possibly slightly less so because his panel wouldn't have been as strong as in previous years. Isn't this probably one of the bigger tests for him now, because he doesn't have that stellar panel like he used to? He's a lot of really good worker bees, a lot of promising hurlers coming through, but he doesn't have that cohort of absolute established star players. So it's a bigger test for him to win a replay now than in the past.
Definitely, yeah. The standard amongst his squad is not the same, and that's why you'd have to admire. He just seems to squeeze every drop out of them, and they seem to all, while they're not of the same ability as what's gone before them, they seem to carry that same mentality. And like you always say with Kilkenny teams now, particularly teams he's over, you have to be 4 or 5 points better than them to win by a point invariably, because they just seem to, I don't know what it is, they just seem to hang on in there. And it'll be interesting to see. A lot of his players, like the likes of Wally Walsh, Killian Buckley, even Morrissey and Joey Holden, would have got a lot of time in their legs the last day, having not played much throughout the league. You'd imagine there'd be an improvement. He will definitely jig things around again, because he will not let Davy think that he knows what he's going to throw at him. So it'll be interesting to see if he stays with the 5 up top as he did the last day. He probably will. It'll probably be a couple of maybe personnel in maybe different positions.
Will, what do you reckon, or what do you make of the fact that the last day against Wexford, in a game that, there was a chance that Kilkenny could have been knocked out, of course, he rushed back Killian Buckley, who God knows when he had last played a game, and also the fact that he must have had very few training sessions in his legs and had a really rough time against Diarmuid O'Keefe. He rushed back Wally Walsh and rushed back Owen Murphy as well. What does that say to you about this Kilkenny panel?
Obviously the feeling that he has to have them. Whether it's going to be starting him in the Leinster final this coming weekend, or whether he looks at maybe the games that are coming after that, a quarter-final or a semi-final. He feels obviously he needs these guys to come back in. They were struggling a bit obviously at times. We talked about it around the Galway game, particularly in the forward line, to try and maybe support TJ Reid. The feeling is maybe you get some guys in, like if Walter Walsh gets back and fit, that's another goal threat within that forward line again. And like what's interesting, I know we're going to talk obviously about Limerick and Tipperary in a bit, is that you're throwing them into an absolute battle in that last game. There's a lot of shadow boxing definitely in Limerick and Tipp in the last round of Munster, because we're feeling they both knew they were already qualified. You haven't watched the last round of Leinster games, that game between Kilkenny and Wexford, both teams were going all at it, and they had to assume up until the very last moment that a defeat was going to knock you out of the championship. So it's going to be interesting to see how both teams managed that actual turnaround very quickly from playing each other in a highly competitive match 2 weeks ago to having to go back to Croke Park. And for Wexford particularly, I would wonder how much the final 2 years ago will play in their mind, because remember how everything was boiling nicely in Wexford, having beaten Kilkenny, going to a Leinster final and then underperformed against Galway in the final. I'm sure Davy is absolutely determined they don't have a repeat of 2 years ago this weekend.
I don't know if they underperformed, I just don't think they were good enough, and that Galway team was at a different level as well.
I'd be of that opinion as well. I just don't think they were good enough at the time. On Cody, I think you had to throw it. There was permutations that they were going to be out of the championship if they lost. I think you just had to try and get your best players in there, and the players you named there, the three in particular, Murphy, Buckley and Walsh, are three of his most influential players.
Very hard to take if you're on the panel and you've been training, like you're going...
Saying that, like on that, it's very hard to take for Adrian Mullen to be whipped off after half time and then he comes and delivers a man of the match performance. I don't know if many other managers could do that with a player. Like you've been dropped several times, I'm sure, as have I. And it's...
Well, when we're not already on the bench.
Yeah, exactly. I've been dropped from the bench as well. But it's very hard to deal with, like, and invariably something like that, if that was another player with another manager, that would have been the end of Adrian Mullen's season, you'd imagine. And now he's, in brilliant form and played well the other night for the 20s. And
if he goes well again, we'll start talking about Young Hurler of the Year.
Exactly. Whereas, very few managers could do that. So I think he was right to go with his best team. If they were fit to take the field, which they were, Killian Buckley he'd probably put him on someone different the next time if he's going to play at the weekend, just because Dee O'Keefe requires special attention and you have to be 100% going after him.
And what does it say to Richie Hogan now, because he 5 years ago was Hurler of the Year, or was it even 4 years ago, 2014 or 15? He was key man. Everything revolved around him, whether he played full forward, centre forward, wherever. The game plan seemed to revolve about get the ball to Richie Hogan and he's going to do damage. He was an unused sub the last day as well.
Richie, the day against Limerick last year was, I honestly think it was like the fifth or sixth game he had played. He played 5 or 6 games or come on and hadn't scored. Yeah. And even the day against Galway, he had a goal then against Galway. Yeah, he got 1-3 or 1-4, I think. He has had a lot of shots in games, and even against Galway he had shots, and I don't know, it just doesn't seem to be flowing for him. Cody obviously doesn't think he's shown the form to be in there. If he's on form, he plays, he contributes at some stage, but if he's kind of hit and miss, and it seems to be it's very deflating when he hits those couple of wides in games, which he has done, take the Limerick game out too, so I think Cody's, if he's playing and he's showing the form in training, he's going to play him, but if he's not going to put him in there.
He mustn't be right.
He mustn't be, no. He's had ongoing back issues for 3 or 4 years now.
Who does Croke Park suit? Because I think there's this sort of general acceptance that once Kilkenny get to Croke Park here, they're going to win this game, and maybe that's just a historical thing or even a recent history where Kilkenny do tend to beat Wexford and pretty much everyone else in the province. Is it as simple as that? Like, you'd imagine it's going to be a more open field, there's going to be more room. It's a home ground for Kilkenny in some senses, because they've played there so often. I don't know, because I look at this Wexford team and I think, who are the guys who enjoy open space? Lee Chin, not Lee Chin.
Well, Liam.
Lee Chin obviously loves the open space run up through the centre. Rory O'Connor loves the space. Dee O'Keefe, Paul Morris is good with the ball. Conor MacDonald when he has a bit of space, if he's not isolated and outnumbered. And of course, Jack O'Connor came on and did damage, of course, the last day as well. So who does Croke Park suit more?
Definitely suits Colin Fennelly. You'd imagine it would be more space for TJ to operate as well. Yeah. Billy Ryan's not slow. I don't know if there's much of an advantage for either of them, to be honest with you. If anything, it might free TJ up a bit, because you'd imagine he'd have a bit more space to manoeuvre, just given how big Croke Park is. I don't think there's much of an advantage for either of them, being honest.
Yeah, look, I think Wexford's corner forwards will enjoy the space that they're going to get. They showed in the Kilkenny game they were quite good at cutting in from wide positions and taking scores as well, so I'm sure they'll like that kind of stretch. Obviously Davy is going to be trying to close space on the other side of the pitch. I mean, we've already talked about the fact that he's going to populate pretty heavily around the middle third. In all likelihood they're going to try and make their half as tight as they possibly can and then try and get the ball back out in the counter-attack. So I don't think playing in Croke Park is going to cause Wexford any particular problems. As you say, the fact that Kilkenny, and particularly Kilkenny's clubs, have played in Croke Park, it's like a second home for most of these hurlers over the last few years. I'm intrigued to see, because I thought Wexford shackled TJ reasonably well 2 weeks ago, so it's going to be interesting to see if he does get more space this time around, because Kilkenny need to get him on the ball.
It will be Matt O'Hanlon again, you'd imagine.
Interesting, they might try and take him out of his comfort zone a bit, maybe.
Take Matt O'Hanlon out?
TJ might end up in the full forward line at some stage.
Yeah, like he did. Matt O'Hanlon started his career as a full-back as well, so I don't think it'd be...
Harder, like, stop a man catching a ball when it comes into the edge of the square, as he was doing at wing-back. Like, if TJ catches it's a penalty or a goal. Do you know what I mean? Just think, I think Cody will think about it a bit more and think, okay, they want us to play this way, they want TJ to be shackled out here, we might just throw something a little different.
Do you think then that they might say, Liam Ryan, you pick him up if he goes into the full forward line, if he goes anywhere else on the field, you're on him, Matt O'Hanlon?
Possibly so. I'm a big believer that definitely the full back shouldn't change. The full back should stay in his position if at all possible. I'd like to see 3 and 6 staying in their positions if at all possible, and 2, 4, 5 and 7 can move around depending on where to go. So I'd
you always have to have an exception to that rule as well. Like, you know the way Chris Crummy did so well last week on Johnny Glynn. If he had to go in full forward, I'd still be of a mind that, do you know what, Chris, you go back in there as well.
With someone that matches up like that.
Yeah, but in a general sense, I do agree with you on that one. Who's going to match up with Lee Chin this week? Because Paddy Deegan went off injured, looked like a knee injury in the first half. If he's right, I
think he's back training.
Yeah, but you just don't know if he'll be right. Maybe they'll do a late switch and they're just keeping it quiet for now. Maybe he won't make it, maybe he'll be fine. Jason Clear came in and did fine, but you would say Lee Chin, again, was quite influential against Kilkenny. So would you say, Cillian Buckley, you've had a couple of weeks now, you've had your game under your belt, the idea in your head, will I be okay to come back after being out for so long? Right, you had a tough game, but you're probably delighted you have 45 minutes under your belt and you've a bit of training done as well. So maybe we'll put you back on Lee Chin and put someone else midfield who's more used to it, like James Maher, for example.
It's not simple going from Dermot O'Keefe to Lee Chin.
No.
I believe Buckley was kind of...
Lean Chin, by the way.
I believe Buckley was laid up for a while after that game, just a few days, because I think his knee swelled up or something like that. So he'd imagine he would come on and off. That's a big assignment as well. A fit Cillian Buckley, 100%, he's the ideal man to pick him up. But an 80 to 90% Cillian Buckley, maybe not. They're not blessed with massive options in that. Like Lee Chin is particularly physical. So like Joey Holden would do a good man-marking job. Probably not as physical as Lee Chin. But I wouldn't be too surprised. They will give him special attention. Interesting to see who picks him up though. I wouldn't have any strong opinion on it. It's difficult. Buckley is the ideal one, but he's not going to be perfect for that game.
And Paddy Deegan wasn't having it all his own way as well, and if he's not 100% as well, he'll possibly be in more trouble. I know we looked at this last week, but again, this is more or less the setup of the Kilkenny and Wexford game as I would see it happening. So it's going to be probably just Conor MacDonald a lot of the time, Hugh Lawler, who looks a really good prospect behind him, Pádraig Walsh in front of him, Kevin Foley at this end, and
Conor Fogarty could pick up Lee Chin actually. That would be someone that would be not tailor-made, but physically and the kind of brawn he brings to the game and the effect he can have, and he's a very good spider.
I believe he's more or less the fittest player on the panel, just up there with the likes of Buckley.
He could be the one, yeah.
But then again, actually, the last day they put Cillian Buckley in midfield, didn't work out, and Dermot O'Keefe, as we said, while Conor Fogarty remained wing back. Would swapping the two of them not put Conor Fogarty back to midfield where he was in 2014 and possibly 15 as well, and put Buckley back half?
Could do, and Fogarty offered an awful lot going forward the last day, because I know you've mentioned it before that one of the ways that Cody might see to work around maybe Davy's system would be to actually push his wing backs up, which he did the last day to fairly good effect.
If I was Davy Fitz, I'd be thinking, how can I curb the influence of Pádraig Walsh, who we know is going to want to collect, like he's such speed and he's such a drive of a ball as well actually, and he's going to cover that ground in front of Conor MacDonald, so it's going to be very tough for Conor MacDonald to get scores in this area. I think the scores he got the last day were all, there was one after about 10 seconds and it was up here. So would you think Cathal Dunbar, for example, let's say he starts, you stand more or less kind of 5-10 yards in front of Pádraig Walsh. Now it chokes you up a little bit in the sense that you're 3 versus 2 there, but if you're going in narrow, you're leaving that 30 yards either side as well where the ball can be delivered into. They don't have the option of Aidan Nolan, as we know. He has his 2-match ban now.
I believe Damien Reck is in trouble with hamstring injury as well, which will rob their options a bit. But just on that as well, you'd much rather Pádraig Walsh be marked than somebody else. He's just too comfortable on the ball. It's the same as Paddy Maher. You'd rather leave an Enda Morrissey or a Joey Holden. And
so would you sicken him? Would you sicken Pádraig Walsh and say, right, Cody, you decide someone else? Yeah, exactly like you're saying. Enda Morrissey's going to be your spare man now. And then what do Kilkenny do? Do they think, right, well, Killian Buckley, because he's not 100% right now, maybe let you be a spare man back there as well, because and it's a very tough position being a sweeper. I've said this many times.
There's
if your
so
team's
much
on top, it's brilliant.
There's so much jig jogging going on there. They're going to be second guessing each other, and it takes a couple of minutes. It takes a couple of minutes to realise, okay, Pádraig Walsh has been marked. We need to. Enda Morrissey is free. Maybe we don't want him free. It takes a couple of minutes. And if you're not tuned in, and to be fair, that's why they're all kind of mic'd up, because you mightn't see these things on the sideline. So I'd imagine Buckley as a free man there would work well. Very comfortable on the ball and is going to cover a load of ground, and it would be a comfortable-ish role for him, given the amount of games he has under his belt.
Yeah. I'm trying to think who else could do that role as well. Jack O'Connor came on, was very good the last day, but he was a bit deeper running at the Kilkenny defence. If you put him in there to sort of rough up, I don't know, that's what's so tantalising.
I don't know if it suits him. I don't know if it suits putting high ball down on top of him either, on Pádraig Walsh either.
Well,
but
I
think they'll be trying to take Pádraig Walsh out of the game, in the sense that they'll try and run from here. He might be sitting back here. They'll try and run from here and be shooting from this area here, 45 to 50 metres out. And rather than going through him, just kind of go over him, basically, you know.
Aidan Nolan has a 2-match ban, so I mean, he confronted Fergal Horgan after the game, and he was shown the red card, so obviously that was for a bit of mouthing. And then he got a red card during the Fenway Classic last November.
I was trying to tot up when he got the red card.
I was looking through the league and I couldn't
find it during the league. So from the Fenway Classic, just that is sick.
An 11-a-side promotional tournament last November.
Yeah.
Now, do you think, so he would have got the 1-game ban anyway for mouthing at Fergal Horgan. Do you think he deserves a 2nd-game ban? Based on an 11-a-side promotional game.
It's a difficult one, Shane, because obviously, you know, if you take this out, you take out, say, challenge games, and anything could happen in them at that stage. So there is that balance to be had. But I'm not a fan of the Fenway Classic anyway. I doubt David Fitzgerald will be a fan of it now when this ban is kicked in as well. Like, it's kind of stupid, like, how that counts as this season even, as opposed to being last season. Like, almost that should just be seen as an exhibition tournament and not count towards suspensions. For
the GA tried to legitimise it, and this is one. He's basically suffering as a result of it.
Still in all, and I had a discussion with my brother about this, and he was very much of a mind, well, who made you go mouthing over to the referee? You know you're not supposed to do that. And also, the 11-a-side thing is a promotional event. Why are you pulling across a lad in that? So, if you do the crime...
I agree on both counts, but to me, it seems kind of stupid that it counts as part of this season.
The ironic thing is that Aidan Nolan went having a go at Fergal Horgan because whoever was running the scoreboard and the timer in Wexford Park turned it off, or went for a cup of tea at the most exciting part of the game, and it stopped at like 73-20 or something like that. So there was another minute to 90 seconds played, but he didn't know that, and he thought they could have been out of the Leinster Championship or whatever, or missed out in Leinster final. So that's why he went. So it's essentially their own fault, and that's why I didn't think they'd appeal, actually.
You're rooting for Aidan Nolan here, by the sounds of it.
No, they're the authors of their own downfall. Like, someone within Wexford GA has made a boo-boo with the scoreboard.
And I suppose if that happened to Offaly, you'd do a sit-down protest, didn't you? You would, of course.
We would have done it right after the game.
Just swinging out a crossbar. Who's going to win the game?
I think Kilkenny will edge it.
Are you going to say that based on tradition and it's Kilkenny?
Not necessarily. I think Kilkenny picked it up after the Galway game. Like, I was impressed with how they hurled in Wexford Park the last time. I think, look, it was obviously very tight. You're looking genuinely at an absolute coin toss of a game, to use a cliche ahead of this one, but I think Kilkenny will just have enough.
Very, very tight. I wouldn't be. I have a sneaking feeling for Wexford, but Stockholm syndrome, and just the fact that I think Kilkenny, if it's a tight game, will come out just by 1 or 2 if TJ gets a bit of room at all. But I wouldn't be a bit surprised. And the incentive for Wexford, as I said last week, everyone said in Wexford that Davy needs to win a Leinster title and get to an All-Ireland semi-final to progress, and he can do the double whammy, but all in one, if they win on Sunday. So it's huge.
I think it'd be good for hurling if Wexford were to win and go directly to a semi-final as Leinster champions, because then they emerge as very genuine genuine All-Ireland contenders.
Good for hurling, like Offaly under-20s winning again.
Spread it out, spread the love.
It is unbelievably close, and I did run through some of the stats last week of their final group game. 39 shots apiece. The puckouts one was 30-32 to Kilkenny. The frees conceded 13-14. Even the amount of hooks, blocks, tackles 43-46. So it's unbelievably tight. Don't think there'll be much in it, but you know what? I'm going to go for Wexford. I'm not 100% sure. I'm very, very unsure. But I'll just about give them the nod because, they've beaten them a couple of times in the last few years. So why not on this occasion?
And just Kevin Foley's, using him as a sweeper, he is just that bit more dynamic than Sean Murphy. And he has the ability to put a ball over from 100 yards.
And Sean Murphy's playing better now that he's a bit further.
Much better, and has the bit of freedom to go forward as well, and has chipped in with plenty of scores as well.
Munster final this weekend, lads. Limerick against Tipperary, abroad in the Gaelic grounds. Limerick win 2 games and somehow have home advantage, lads. It's a disgrace.
It's unreal, isn't it? Actually, it's mad. It's the agreement between the two counties, I presume, is it, or is it just is it their year?
It is the home and away thing. But
this is our year.
It's typical thing. Like something changes in the GA in terms of fixture scheduling or whatever, and you don't necessarily troubleshoot all the things coming down the line to make it more exciting. The group stages, obviously, the incentive should be finish top, and you get a choice of what the venue is going to be. I mean, if you don't have somewhere that's suitable, like for example, if Walsh Park, you're Waterford, you're not going to pick Walsh Park, but you can nominate. We want Cork because, whatever county, it'll be most awkward for them.
Stand.
Yeah, that's true.
I am all for incentivising. Like, if a team finishes on 8 points and wins their 4 games, and if the team finishes on 4 points, winning 2 and losing 2. Like, this should be an incentive for the winning team. There should always be an incentive for finishing first. If I don't know what way does it work in the NFL or any of those, but you'd imagine. You should always get some sort of advantage.
Yeah, it's kind of like in NFL. If you top your division, you're more or less. And
you'd be at home in the playoffs.
If you're ranked, you're at home the whole way through, which is a huge advantage there. Hard to know how much of an advantage it's been to Tipp over the years because teams are so used to.
Everyone else plays in Temple all the time.
Yeah, all the time as well. Do you think it was a good idea for Sheedy to start the full deck last time out now when it looks like, well, obviously Bonner Maher's out for the season, Cathal Barrett's a doubt. I don't think he's been fully ruled out as well. But we talked about it a bit last year, but having another week to process it, should Tipp have gone with a bit more of an understrength team?
Yeah, the injuries are a freak. There's nothing you can do about that. And 2 other high-profile people could have gotten injured.
Well, you are 16 times more likely to get injured in a game than training.
I suppose
the GA Health and Wellbeing, I think, pretty much published that before.
That's fair enough, but it could have been someone else that got injured. They were obviously going to start a certain amount of them. I kind of am of the belief that when you're winning, you should try and stay winning if you can and keep everything going. They probably won't have learned as much as Limerick, but they have kept their own momentum, kept their own confidence within the camp. They've lost 2 men during the game before half-time and still managed to beat the All-Ireland champions. So you'd imagine that would bring confidence. All of their big men played another really good game and are absolutely flying high on confidence. Limerick will have learned an awful lot in the sense that we've probably seen what way Tipperary played. We've probably seen the problems that we had playing against them, and you'd imagine behind the scenes they've come up with a remedy to work against that. But it's hard to beat winning as well,
And it's precisely the opposite then for John Kiley. He gambled by, look, I don't buy this idea that he thinks everyone on the panel are as good as each other, and that, we'll get back to the Keane Lynch. Was he dropped? Was he not? In a second.
Reds O'Grady seems to think he was dropped.
We'll get back to that in a second. But for John Kiley, they had that whole winning run for a long time. Tipperary had won 3 of their 9 previous championship games. Now they've won 4 in a row. So confidence in that sort of sense. Whereas John Kiley's lost 2 of 4 now. So
yeah, I mean, it makes it obviously a disjointed campaign for Limerick now because they've lost the first game, they've come back, played well in the next 2, and now they're going into a Munster final on the back of a defeat. I mean, look, if they win this Sunday, he can easily argue, look, lads got game time the last time, we're spreading things around, it didn't matter, everyone's fresh going into the final. But I would think that you don't want to go into a final on the back of a defeat. Ultimately, if you can keep the run going, even if you could just get yourself a draw and say at least you didn't lose to the same opposition you're going to play, it would have been in the back of the mind of both teams. They knew they were going to play each other in the final, unless there was an absolute freak result in Ennis to knock one of them out of the top 2. So they knew they were going to be playing each other. And I think it was definitely a case of, he obviously took it that, right, we're going to a Munster final anyway, this is a chance to switch things round. But I think if I was in the Limerick management, I would have tried to go full steam ahead. I mean, Tipperary were unlucky with the injuries, and I think like Bonner is going to be such a huge loss for them in terms of just being a worker and a link man in that half forward line. It's not like they don't have options to come in, but he's a huge workhorse to actually lose from your team.
Yeah, there isn't another Bonner in the sense of someone who can take the ball straight up the guts of the opposition. I think Niall O'Mara, if he's fully fit, I don't think he's too far away now. He's probably the closest that Tipperary have in there. Dan McCormick's a slightly different player as well, but Niall O'Mara, like, he was brilliant in the first game, we keep saying it. We'll come back to this Keane Lynch thing. So you reckon that
dropped.
You reckon Keane Lynch was dropped, and I had read it on my Our Game podcast during the week, and when he said it, the way I took it is that because he wasn't playing last week, he won't be happy about that. But you've just decided that means that Reds, or former Tipp captain, has agreed with you that Keane Lynch was dropped.
I'm surprised he didn't name check me, to be honest with you. I agree with that man.
He thinks you're a fool.
Actually, nobody would go public and actually agree with me, but a good few people behind the scenes have said, yeah, no, I don't agree with what that clown Stapleton is saying. I totally agree with what you're saying.
We're gone to the personal insults. So I put it up as a poll a little earlier as well. It should be coming up on screen here. Right, Verney is still insisting that Keane Lynch was dropped, whereas I think Kylie was shuffling the deck. Because, as I said earlier, you're a fool. So which was it? 22% say he was dropped, 78% say that Kylie was shuffling the deck. And that's 305 votes. That's a decent sample size. Do you accept defeat?
I'm hoping that those 60 people that voted on my side, just over 60, are all following me. And can you just pass on their names and I'll follow them back? Listen, I'm happy to be in the minority.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay. It's funny, I was recording another podcast or two with the brother yesterday over in his house. So we had done a bit on Limerick and Tipperary, which is on my Twitter, and then I said to him afterwards, I forgot to do something about Kilkenny and Wexford. So his girlfriend was back in the house at that stage, and she was still doing a bit of work, so we couldn't use the sitting room, dining room area, so we went out to the spare bedroom. So we set it up, and the two
tour of the Stapleton's house.
No, this is his girlfriend. Him and his girlfriend's house. Yeah. So we're standing up in the room. We have the phone set up on a tripod. It's looking over at us, and we start the whole thing. And we're talking about Kilkenny Wexford. Then, of course, doesn't Dan McCormick show up at the door, stick his head in through the window? So we have to cancel that. And all of a sudden he says, "Wait, I recognise this room from Instagram." So the brother's girlfriend Gisette, she has an Instagram fashion page called Secret Silhouette. Follow that now. Make sure you do. Surely some kudos for that. And Dan recognised that, takes a picture of the brother in it, and tags it as Secret Silhouette on Instagram. So that was my day yesterday.
I have never heard as many plugs in like one soliloquy from one person.
But a soliloquy suggests there's nobody to listen. It's a monologue.
I don't know if there's anybody listening to you, to be honest with you.
Right, so does Sheedy risk Barrett if he is anyway right? No
way. No, not for me, no. Because if he pulls up again, he's gone for the rest of the campaign. If he doesn't play him, and he didn't seem to be limping off too badly, if he doesn't play him, he's fit for an All-Ireland semi-final or quarter-final, I'd imagine. Definitely semi-final.
What do you think?
You want him for Galan, but obviously if he's not fit, you can't play him.
And who would you play? If Barrett doesn't play, who goes on Galan?
We discussed this a few weeks ago. We were wondering who they were going to shift across if not. You could drop Maher back onto him, but...
Which one? There's three Mahers that are in the half back line.
I wouldn't drop either.
You could go purely physical and drop, say, Brendan Maher back into that area and just have him sweep from a purely physical point of view. It's a pity because I thought Barrett was actually a decent matchup on Galan a week ago before he got injured. Otherwise, you're shifting one of the cornerbacks across and just a specialist job on him maybe.
Brendan Maher did play minor under Sheedy as a cornerback as well, and he played under 21 as a cornerback as well. So it's not an unknown position to him, but you probably are going to be closest to goal a lot of time. Now, Brendan would have speed, he has strength, he's a good hurler and all that kind of stuff. So he's a bit of a
good physical matchup for Galan as well.
Will we see...
Do you take him out of the half back line?
I wouldn't. And will we see your Michael Breen ending up in the full back line?
That would be a real left field call at this stage when it hasn't been tried before. You know, Brendan is playing in the back line already, and being in the full back line is a world apart from
it's completely different.
Because when you're playing in the half back line, the whole idea of the opposition is to drag you out into that middle area and leave space for these lads back here. So therefore you're out more or less midfield. When you're in, and you're in traffic. When you're in here, and you've been there, I've been there, you look out and there's nothing but your man in front of you because you have to keep him goal side, and 50 yards either side. Yeah, it's actually a little bit scary at times, isn't it?
Different type of when you're contesting a ball as a half-back with your man, invariably it's under a puck out usually, so it's a 50-50 ball. When you're contesting a ball going into the full forward line, it's invariably not 50-50, it's in the forward's favour, and it's low in front. You don't get that type of ball in the half-back line really, unless you're sitting back and you don't have a man, you're not chasing a man. Completely different roles. It's going to be very, very interesting, because we saw the last day, if Galan is shut down somewhat, not saying Limerick run out of ideas, but it's definitely their main tactic up front is to get the ball to him.
But it was more the supply line was slowed down, because we know that Limerick, who is Kilkenny-esque at times, except with the way they work the ball in triangles. It'll be a hand pass from that guy to then this guy running off the shoulder, for example, and then until somebody, like let's say Keane Lynch gets it there, he'll wait to give a pass or work a situation where if I'm coming out from corner, wing back or whatever, I've got time to look up and pick that ball in over to Galan. That wasn't happening because the Tipperary forwards were turning over Limerick more often than not. So for the success of whoever is on Galan and whoever's on Peter Casey if he starts again, and Graham Mulcahy I presume he will come back into the team, what happens up here is going to dictate how Galan gets on up there.
Yeah, and the flip side of that, Noel McGrath is obviously the man that kind of makes everything tick for Tipp. So like it wouldn't make sense to put Keane Lynch on Noel McGrath, because essentially they're the two kind of quarterbacks, they're the two people that set up. So Will O'Donoghue, I'd imagine, would start, and probably maybe he might push up somewhat on McGrath, and hopefully hope that the two wing forwards, not hope, they'll sit back and defend a bit more, and then Lynch would probably pick up Michael Breen. It would make sense for Michael Breen to pick up Keane Lynch.
Breen has done well on Barron and Colin Galvin. Now it didn't happen for him against Will O'Donoghue the last day, but you'd imagine that will be the idea. John Kiley will want to shut down the playmaker, and it'll be the same case with Noel McGrath as well. So what's that going to do to the game? Is it just going to turn out to be a war?
Yeah, it mightn't be as free-flowing and open as we want. If there's a lot of
Leinster-esque, actually.
It could be, yeah. If there's a lot of lads that you're trying to shut down, it's not going to be free. I wouldn't imagine it'd be that free-flowing. But for Tipp to win, it's going to have to be somewhat, because that's the way they play.
Call it. What do you think, Will?
I think Limerick are going to win.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. Well, despite the last day, obviously Tipperary impressive. That was with Limerick having shuffled a little bit going into it. I think Limerick have a big performance in them. I think the fact that the Gaelic grounds helps as well. It's a bit of a misnomer, but I think Tipp haven't won there since 1969 or 70. I think was the last.
Tipp haven't won the Gaelic grounds.
Haven't won a Munster final. I know it's a bit of a misnomer because obviously you don't play there every year.
Yeah.
But I think it gives Limerick a slight edge going into the final as well. And I think, like they did against Cork, they've shown that they can pick themselves up quickly after a defeat as well. I think Limerick will just have enough.
It's hard to be confident in either of the two finals, to be honest with you.
But
But just Bonner and particularly Barrett missing just tips the scales for Limerick in my favour. And if Keane Lynch doesn't start at the weekend, I'll wear a crown in here and walk into Jerry the King Lawler's music for the show.
And if he does start, what'll you do?
If he does start, I'd say, geez, fair play to him. Kylie's after, Kylie, he's not dropped. That's the opposite of dropped.
Restored.
He's restored to the starting 15.
But will you at least kind of say, look, I got that wrong, lads. I'm a bit of a fool.
No, I've tripled down now on it. So no.
So no matter what, whether you're right or wrong, you're going to be right.
Me and Keane are having a little text conversation here. Just going to say, I'm just letting on that you're dropped. No bother.
Let's talk. I think Limerick are going to win, probably by a point or two as well. But just if I put on my Tipperary supporter hat, which rarely comes off, I would just be thinking, can Tipp learn enough from this game, and can they figure out within their forward line who's going to replace Bonner, or what they're going to do that's going to replace Bonner. I think that's important. I think Dan McCormick will more or less kind of go into midfield as well, and you'll have Tipp with 5 forwards, and I'd say it'll be similar enough for Limerick. Sure, they often only have 3 forwards, and Gerard Hegarty, who will definitely come back into the team. That's huge as well. A couple of comments in actually on YouTube. Whoever loses the Munster final has the easier run in, beat Dublin and face Kilkenny in the semi. Option is wait a few weeks for Cork.
Would love to see Tipp and Dublin in the quarter final. Like who do you go for there? Like, you're loving with Matty Kenny and you're loving with your own county. Like, Jesus Christ, that's a tough one.
I've told the boys, and many lads in the cooler lads who are on the Dublin team, look, as much as I want you to win, it's Tipp all the way. I'm sorry. Joe Murray on YouTube. I think Limerick will try and work the ball to their wing backs in shooting positions, as Dan McCormick has to drop back to cover the space Pádraig Maher has left. Yeah, he'll be covering space in and around midfield. I don't think Pádraig Maher will necessarily leave in front of the D area. I couldn't see that happening at all, but I could see Dan coming back in here And it's really going to be a choked up sort of situation, I'd imagine, because Tipp will possibly, if Jake Morris starts, it'll be himself and John McGrath in there. I think Seamus Callinan might go on Declan Hannon, because that'll be someone running at him and force Declan Hannon to defend. How will that go, actually?
Yeah, he hasn't had to defend much, has he, really?
Well, that's the thing, yeah.
The Cork game was one of the few games where he did, and that didn't go so well, so they'll try and put him in the back four. He tends to orchestrate things from there as well. The two, it's so interesting. You have Lynch and McGrath in midfield, you have the two centre backs. There's so many really interesting matchups. You'd love to be a fly in the wall in either direction this week, kind of coming up and just hearing the talk and what way they're going to go about it. It's going to be very interesting.
Final word actually on the half back line for Limerick. Is Dan Morrissey going to come back into the team, or
Dan Morrissey comes back in for me. Just
who?
For Paddy O'Loughlin.
Right,
yeah.
So they'll go back to the 2017
I think so, yeah. Paddy O'Loughlin was a bit ponderous on the ball the last day. And I don't think, not saying that Dan Morrissey is a big striker from the half-back line necessarily. Usually looks up and deliver a ball. But Paddy O'Loughlin is just maybe a bit slower of a strike, and maybe just not as kind of knacky for those maybe 30 or 40 yard balls as Dan Morrissey is.
I think when Dan Morrissey gets the ball, you more or less know it's going to be knocked straight up the line as well. I don't think he trusts himself to carry it the whole way across. So that's that game as well. Yeah, I think, are we all going for Limerick here?
I think so,
yeah. Just about. Let's talk about the Joe McDonagh final then. I saw a very interesting quote in a Kevin Egan article about the Laois kitman, Pat Delaney, and he goes, he's just talking about how he was the ref in the 1989 All-Ireland final.
I think he was ref in a club game last weekend as well.
Was he? Yeah. Within the article, he was talking about how he was out in the tractor in the field, and then his daughter rang him and said, you may come down and ref this match here. It's a camogie quarter final, and the ref hasn't showed up. So he goes down to his wife then, does Pat, and he goes, you may get me gear out there now to go up and ref this game. But just in that spirit, the quotes were, and this is in terms of like having a checklist for when he goes out to be kitman. I do have a list that I keep hanging up at home with different things that I'm supposed to have every Sunday. Between myself and Mary, I'd say, call it out there, because I'd read it myself and it mightn't have registered. So she'd ask, have you the bibs for the subs warming up? I have, I'd say. Have you the Mayor Ferna bibs? I have, I'd say. Have you one for Eddie Brennan? I have that one. Have you 2 sets of jerseys? Yep, I have them all. Have you the Lucas Lade Sports? Yep, I have them, that's grand. Have you the bars? Yeah, I have them. Have you the toilet paper and that stuff in the bag? Jesus, it's unreal. The one thing that I mightn't have is the one thing someone will look for. It might be an all-time low looking for toilet paper, but for some reason there might not be toilet paper in a place. It has happened before. That's when you know you have it, it's grand.
We used to have one of the boys that used to always carry toilet paper, and he'd absolutely stink the place out with it. But like that's literally an unbelievable sketch, like, isn't it?
Well, look, Laois Westmeath, it's basically a race for the Leinster competition in 2020, and Westmeath lost last year to Carlow as well, and Laois very high scoring this year in terms of goals, 12 goals, but they're up against the Westmeath team that has only conceded 2, which seems to be a trend of Joe Quaid's teams, because last year when he won the Christy Ring with Kildare, very few goals conceded as well.
Yeah, look, Westmeath have obviously got a good setup in their defence. First of all, very settled 3 and 6. Probably 2 of the best hurlers, I'd say, outside of the All-Ireland Championship, in Tommy Doyle at full-back and Angus Clark at centre-half-back. Laois should be trying to occupy both players. I would imagine Laois, there's a very good chance Neil Foyle, now he's in goal-scoring form again, will put Foyle in as a battering ram on Tommy Doyle to try and stop him from coming out with the ball as well. It's going to be intriguing to see how Laois's forward line lines up, because a few of the guys that came in the last day, he effectively did a Limerick on it and shuffled the pack for the drawn game at O'Moore Park, Eddie Brennan, and he's been given a few extra options. Mark Cavan has been leading their scoring this year because he's been on the freeze, which has actually left Stephen Pickey-Maher, who's a very impressive player, kind of on the sideline a bit.
He wasn't on the panel a few weeks ago.
Yeah, he didn't make the 26.
He had a club game against us.
Pickey-Maher did. Kerry game, he wasn't in 26. So it's interesting to see. He's now coming back into the 4 again. Charlie Dwyer has got himself back fit again. He wasn't fit for a good bit of the year. I think he had to get a bit of weight down as well before Eddie was playing him in games. He's got himself flying fit now going into the summer. Laois have got a lot of kind of classy forwards up against that Westmeath defence, which is for the best part very, very settled. Some unusual stories in there, like Aaron Craig, who is, I think, living in Kildare at the moment, playing his club Hurling in Wexford and playing for Westmeath at Intercounty. So he's just been going up and down to both directions, because there was a bit of club in Wexford in April as well. So he's going to be sitting into that defence. You've got the Greville brothers in there as well. They know exactly what they're doing as a defensive unit. So it's going to be interesting to see how Laois are going to break them down. And similarly, Laois now have a few defensive options that they found during the league. Fullback was a big problem area for them, has been since Darren Maher retired. They played Matthew Whelan back in a fullback for quite a bit at the Joe McDonagh Cup. moved him to the half-back line for the game against Westmeath the last day. So I'm interested whether he goes back in and Derek McNicholas this coming weekend as well, because I assume Derek is going to play in that position. Niall Mitchell's gone to the States now at this stage. He was injured during the middle of the championship and he's not going to be around for the final. Obviously Niall O'Brien's been away for the whole year as well. So Westmeath very reliant particularly on Killian Doyle, who's been doing the vast majority of their scoring. They're going to need someone else other than Robbie Greville, who got a few scores the last day, to step up if Westmeath are going to win. And for that reason, it's difficult enough to see Westmeath win, as much as I'd hate to see them go through the pain of losing 3 finals in 2 years.
Yeah, and Killian Doyle, he got the 3 highest single tallies throughout this competition in the first 3 games, but held scoreless the last day by Laois from play as well.
Yeah.
What way do you see this going?
Even he was quiet enough against Kerry in the one game that they did lose. Just think Laois have a bit more firepower. All the names Will said there, and you throw Paddy Purcell into that as well, coming forward from midfield or half forward.
3 goals scored in this competition.
There's just 4 or 5 scoring options, whereas if they can tie down Killian Doyle, you'd imagine Laois should have a bit more up the other end. It'll probably be, I'd imagine it'd be pretty high scoring, but yeah, Laois just have a bit more in attack for me.
On the scoring as well, Shane, remarkable. I think that Enda Rowland played his 50th game for Laois. Would have probably played an awful lot more, but for the fact that he had to fight for the number 1 jersey for his first 2 years in the panel. He scored 50 points across those 50 games.
That is incredible.
He's averaging a point again.
You might have to go to do your sports.
I'm alright for a few minutes.
You're alright for a few minutes. We've got a viewer image sent in. Michael Verney, we're going to have to get you to describe what's going on in this image. I haven't even seen it. Oh, Jesus. Oh, no. I'm after being thrown under the bus here.
Funny enough now, that image was brought to my attention recently.
This will be Keane Waldron,
so,
yeah?
Kula 415, Vincent's 216.
This is...
Obviously, that kind of hefty bloke in the picture is number 18, because he was a substitute, I assume, was Shane Stapleton. The goal is actually open. And if only, like, there's a button on it there to press play, but we can't, obviously. But it's like a what happened next. So Shane has the ball soloing through. The goal is free, completely free. And by all accounts, what does he do? He puts the ball over the bar.
I took the
over the bar. Over the bar. And you're giving out about lads in football, hand passing the ball over the bar.
But in this situation, we needed to win just to secure it. And that's like a split second.
5 points
like
up.
A split second later, the goalie is in there. Right, and I thought to myself afterwards, I am not going to embarrass myself by getting a shot from this angle saved. Now, by the time I get in there around 10 yards
so
out,
where's the keeper at this stage?
He's just like this is cropped so conveniently, like he's just right there.
He's in another parish.
This is Keane Waldron, who met you at a wedding last Friday. Keane Waldron, my club teammate, yes? Did he send this on to you?
That image was sent, I don't know.
Oh, well, it was definitely sent in by Keane Waldron, was it? Yeah.
It's absolutely pathetic. That is pathetic. You obviously...
You know, I won...
You've no grapefruits or cojones.
Someone in the club someone I know had put Kula -5 for that game. I won him €500 for throwing that ball over the bar, rather than missing an obvious goal, which I definitely would have missed.
Did you shorten your grip and stick it over the bar, or did you actually have a shot at goal?
No, I shortened the grip and threw it over.
I'd say there was a fist pump as well after. Cheers, lads.
It was a sort of like, you know, in Gaelic football, when a lad scores a point, he starts pointing where you need to start marking up over there.
That's the worst now. I literally was that's astounding that you put that ball over.
I got brackets after my name. That's all that matters.
That's literally a big egomaniac. I actually knew that was why.
You were
when they go back in the history books, you'll see 1 beside your name. You could have had a 1-0, but no, you took the handy option.
No, I'd set up a goal already.
Before we go, Shane, I'll give you a quick one about a Laois supporter who's going to be watching the game on TG Card this weekend as well.
Yeah.
There's a guy called Bruce from Oregon who I used to email back in the day when I was working in Midlands 103, and he always be looking to see what game was live on a particular weekend, when Laois was probably at a lower ebb at the time as well. He had ancestors from Laois and he got interested in hurling. He decided to support Laois as opposed to supporting Kilkenny or Dublin, and this is going to be one of the first times that he actually gets to see Laois televised, because it's going to be on TG Car on their YouTube this weekend. There's a piece in Laois today with them. I think they're setting up a GoFundMe on one of the GA supporters boards at the moment to try and get him over to see a game next year. But I think Bruce has been following the Laois team for about 10 or 12 years, so it's going to be great for him getting up at 6 a.m. to watch them in that final at the weekend.
Great stuff.
Just on that, I do have an issue with, and it's the second year in a row, the Joe McDonagh is a massive game. It's the Tier 2 final, massive game for Laois and Westmeath, massive hurling game for everyone, and again, it's going to clash with the Munster final, and like a lot of people aren't going to know what's going on. People in Croke Park that are going to the Leinster final a lot of them, or if they get a chance, they're going to go outside. They're going to go outside and watch the Munster final. And I just think it's wrong whether it should be a standalone or not. I don't know, in a big venue, or whether one of there shouldn't be 2 provincial finals on the same day. But there needs to be some way around it. Any Tier 2 football county or player involved with a Tier 2 football county must look at the Joe McDonagh and even the 3 Ring Rackard Mar finals last Saturday and think, okay, they were played on one of the busiest weekends in the GA's calendar with 3 provincial finals and a load of qualifiers. Like, how are you going to get the coverage? You're not going to get the coverage that they deserve. So
the way I understand it, I think that initially RT may have looked to cover this game or put out that option.
They offered to cover it.
Yeah, the GA then wanted all the finals on the Sunday, or there was some movement there. They might actually clarify, if they want to tweet in, clarify what that situation was. But yeah, definitely, having the 3 games on the same day, if you're a hurling person and you like going to these games, it's not ideal.
No.
Like, have a double header on the Saturday and then the other game on the Sunday. Alternate them every year.
Particularly in hurling, Shane, as well, when, like, in football, obviously there's a lot more counties playing championships. Hurling's a small enough group. Like.
Okay.
Yeah, and John Horan came out talking about, like, they need more coverage.
We're out of time, Verney.
They obviously need more coverage.
Tweet it
Put
if
the
you want to
games
get
at a different time.
By the way, OTB Sports Radio has been launched, so go to offtheball.com for details of that. We'll be back with the Hurling Show again next Thursday at 12 o'clock. We'll see you then.
The Hurling Show. From Off the Ball.
The Sport Ireland campus Blanchardstown is the home of Irish sport, not just for our athletes but for you in the community. Check out our amazing offers for families with kids camps, sport academies and birthday parties. Or for adults, why not join our gym with a 50-metre pool? Or your club, school, friends can book one of our world-class indoor or outdoor facilities,